All right, so let's actually start making a game. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this cube because I never needed that. First thing I want to do is I'm just going to save, right, you can see by default it makes a sample scene because you have to be able to load something up when you open it up, but I don't actually want sample scenes, so I'm going to save. I usually just call it level 1 because that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to do File, Save As, and you're going to save into, you're automatically going to go to your project folder and go to the assets folder, and you should already have a scenes folder. If you don't, you should make one. So we're going to open that up, and we're just going to call this level 01. Okay, so level 01. Boink. Great. Okay, now I'm going to go to my scenes, and I'm going to delete that sample scene because I don't need it. Bother me. Okay, so we have a scenes folder. That looks great. The next thing we're going to want is to make some platforms so that we can, hop around and do things. Okay, so I'm just going to click back on my scene view here. So those should be relatively simple. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to create a 2D object. We're going to go sprites, and then I'm just going to do a square. Square. It's great. So you can see it automatically highlights to change the name. You can also change it up here. I'm just going to change it up here so you can see. So we'll just call this a platform. Okay, there's our platform. So I'm going to zoom. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and I'm just going to take it. And so in order to move, rotate, and scale and all that, the objects, I thought there was buttons up here. Okay, well, I thought there were up here. But all you do, it's Q for select, or in this case, I guess it's just pan. W for move, E for rotate, and R for scale. Okay, so we're going to do W, and I'm just going to take it, and I'm just going to put it, I'm actually going to do it this way, just to make things a little bit easier. So I can see position, X, Y, and Z. So you can see Z is 0. Currently, my camera is minus 10. Okay, that's the default, which is what we want. Because if we were playing the 3D game, that means that the camera, which you can see I currently have selected here, is behind my object. Okay, so my whole scene will be on Z will be 0. So except for the camera. Click back on this. Okay, so that should remain 0. I'm just going to go ahead and 0 out this. And we will 0 out that. And now you can see it's perfectly on origin. I'm going to take my camera because I moved it a little bit. I'm going to 0 that out, except for the Z. And that way this is perfectly in center. I'm going to hit W now. Just clicking on this, hit W now. And I'm just going to move it down. And the platform should be a little bit longer. So I'm just going to scale R. And I'm going to pull it this way. And let's just type in on X. I'll type in 5. If for some reason you notice that everything is moving, that's because you have it on proportion. So notice now that it scales all of them at the same time. So you can just click that on or off. You can also notice that, see this little thing happens, and you can do it that way as well if you prefer that. But I'm just going to do 5. That looks fine. What I'm going to do is I'll make one platform, and then once I have that one platform, I can use that to make the other platforms. So this platform looks acceptable. What we're going to need next is, didn't come with it. Okay, so what we're going to need next is a player. So let's go ahead and click on this, and we're going to do another 2D object, and we're going to do a sprite. Sprite are our 2D objects. And we're just going to go ahead and let's do a hexagonal flat top. Hexagon flat top. That'll be my player. And I'm just going to, once again, what it does is it places it 0 in the center of your screen. So that's why it's offset, not at 0. I find that more annoying than anything else. So I'm just going to 0 it all out, and I'm just going to leave it right there. One of the things I can do, actually, let's go ahead and rename this too. So we'll call it player, capital P. We call objects with capital letters, all right? So that's actually called Pascal case when you start with a capital letter. Anyway, so we got that. You'll see color here. This will basically tint it. Since everything is white, these graphics are white by default. These are just pre-built generic primitive shapes. I'm just going to click on this, and I'm just going to give it a color, and let's make our player orange. Okay, and let's grab our platform and click on it there, and let's make it green. Makes sense, right? Look at this. That looks like a game. So now if I hit play, and I play my game, you're going to see nothing's going to happen. Yay, because they don't do anything. They're literally just images sitting there. So what I got to do is I got to add some physics to them. So in order for there to be physics on an object, we have to add a rigid body. So I'm going to select my player. You can select it here or here. I'm going to add component, and then I'm going to backspace that, and it would be a physics 2D. You're going to notice that there are 3D physics and 2D physics, and there's some other things that are specifically for 3D and specifically for 2D. They kind of work very similarly. It's just that they're meant to be used in those. So we want to do physics 2D, and then we're going to look for rigid body 2D. Here you go. Rigid body 2D. Badoink. Good. And you can see that body type's dynamic. We're not going to worry about the physics material right now. Simulated, yada, yada, yada. And gravity scale is 1. So right now it's 9.8 meters per second squared if you remember your physics. I'll show you where we can change that because we actually are going to change that because it's going to move. It'll bounce a little bit better if we lower it or raise it. So I'm going to hit play and you're going to see. Yay! He falls, right? So see how he's kind of floaty? That's why we're gonna raise that value. Okay, so he's going through, but he's not landing on this. So he's got physics, right? So he's got physics that's being applied to it. So now we can add a force, I can blow it up, do whatever. However, he doesn't actually have any rigidity to it, even though this says rigid body. What we want to do is we need to add colliders. So we're going to add another component onto my player object, add component, and again, it's a physics object, and we're just going to use a box collider. When in doubt, you want to typically just use the most basic box collider 2D, the most basic thing. Okay, so even though we could do, I don't think there's an hexagonal one, but for all intents and purposes, this should work fine. So it's still not going to work if I hit play to go and fall through because this also needs one. So I'm going to grab the platformer, hit add component, and instead of clicking through here, you could literally just type in box, and there it is, box collider 2D. Bodoink. Great. All right. Now, if for some reason you notice your box collider is not the correct size, mine is, it's automatically making it the size of the object itself. But if it's not, you can actually change the size by clicking on this little button here. And then you can see these little handles will pop up, and then you can adjust it and scale it to the correct size. You can also do it and then click it off, untoggle it when you're done. You can also do it by like using these like offsets and the size down here if that makes you feel better. But that should be fine. All right, I'm going to zoom this thing back out, and then we're going to hit play, and let's see. Yay, he's fallen. That looks acceptable. All right. Look at, see, we are basically already made the game. Now, what we want to be able to do is have this guy be able to move, right? That would be pretty cool. Let's actually do this too, just so we have more to work with. I'm going to take this platformer, and I'm just going to hit Control D or Command D if you're on Mac. I'll hit W for move. And I'm just going to move it over here. And so that moved what? Minus 3 point, oh no, sorry. We'll do minus 8. And then I'm just going to duplicate this again. Control D. And I'm just going to type in 8. All right, so now we have 3 platforms. They're all the same, really. This is not the best way to do it. We're going to use prefabs eventually, but you don't need to know what that is yet. So now we got those. But I want to be able to move left and right and be able to jump, right? Those are the basic mechanics, and that's kind of what we're looking for here. In order to do that, I'm going to need to write a script, okay? So this is where we're going to get into the coding part. That's probably a little less fun. Also, let's go ahead and save this. I'm just going to hit Control S to save, or just do File, Save. So we're going to have to make a script. Now, what I want to do is notice that all my scene files, all one of them is in a scenes folder. But you know, you normally in your game would have multiple levels. So this is just the first level, and it's saved in scenes. Each level is a scene. I want to do the same thing for all the rest of my assets. So I'm going to make a folder called scripts, and all my scripts will go in that folder. It's very important to keep your file folder management managed. So to do that, we're just going to, inside my assets folder, right click and go create, and then you'll see folder at the top, and we're just going to write scripts. Okay, I'm going to double click to open that up, right click. Oh, so now what I want to do is I want to make the actual script. So I can do that right inside of here. It is also possible you could just open up something, then save it, and then drop it in here, but might as well work while you're right in here. So we're just going to right click, create, and you'll see C# script. Okay, and this, you want to name your scripts for what they do. So in this case, it is a player, capital P, controller, capital C. Okay, like that. And then hit enter. All right, player, controller. No spaces, camel case. It's very important that you don't do this. Create, C# script, and we'll say, let's say I was like player, and then I was like, oh crap. I'm like, I didn't do the name right. What you can't do is this. Just want to show you something. You can't change the name. So I'll say, oh, player, controller. Because what I'm going to end up happening is, watch. Oh, maybe I have to play first. Oh, it's not in the scene, so maybe it's not going to cause that. Oh, it's not mad yet. Okay. Let me see. Did it? Yeah. Okay. Let's just throw it on the player just so you can see. Oh, can't connect, blah, 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 because the script cannot be found. Okay, so the reason why I'm bringing this up, just because I'm trying to look for potential errors, is this. I might have changed the name here, but when it creates the file, so if I have this selected, it actually gives me a preview of what it looks like here. You'll notice that the name of this file, right, player controller script.cs for C#, is the same as the class name, player controller. Okay. Now, what happens is that it automatically wrote this code. It created the file and then wrote this code for us. Every time you make a new script, it automatically writes this bit for you. What happened here is that I originally wrote this, blah, 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 right? And then I changed the name. It doesn't automatically change it here. So if you, for some reason, screw up the name, you got to go in the file and change it there as well. All right, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. All right, delete. We don't need it. So I'm just going to right-click and delete it. Just wanted you to be aware in case you run into that error. I've run into that before. Okay, so we got that here. So again, what we're going to do is we're just going to double-click on this, and what that's going to do is it's going to automatically open up Visual Studio Code. But that's only going to work if you made sure that, not shortcuts, that might be helpful for some of you, preferences, make sure the external tool says Visual Studio Code, okay? So I'm going to double-click on it, and it will automatically open that up. Now, if you have a preference of a different text editor, I don't really care. You can go ahead and use that. Personally, I don't find it super useful, but it might be something that you do. I'm just going to click and drag this way. If for some reason you want to make it bigger or smaller, just Control ++, minus. That changes the size of this, so hopefully that'll make things a little bit easier. But automatically opened up here. Another thing I like to do is you might want to click on the extensions, and then you can see currently I have, it looks like I turned it off. Looks like I have C# for Visual Studio, but you can search for extensions like Unity, and it will not find any, which is pretty cool. But we can look for extensions. I don't like them because I found that was actually causing me more errors. But just be aware that something that could exist. I'm gonna go back to my file explorer. We're gonna turn that back. Okay. So this is a script. I'm gonna go real briefly through this because we'll cover it in more depth later on. The first part here. These are the libraries that it's using. Basically, when it looks at these words, see how some of the words are highlighted, like start means something, and like this means something, using means something. You know, if I write, game object dot transform dot position dot x. No, that didn't really highlight anything. Well, that wasn't a good example. Let's do math. Oops, math f, and then math f dot abs. Right. You can see how it highlights the text in certain ways. That's because those are pre-built, like, it basically is the language, just like, the means something. Every part of our language, right? We use the English language. This is our dictionary. These are the words that we're using. That's what you need to know. Okay, so that's what this part is doing. It's saying basically it's using generic C# stuff, and then it's using stuff that's specific to Unity. After that is the name of this class. Okay, so the class is basically the component, if you will, that it's a template that it will make components from. So you'll see later on as we go through. Then this is a function, and this is a function. This function here, the one that says start, that will be run at the beginning on the first frame of the game. So as soon as you hit play, it runs this function. Whatever's inside of here is going to get run. Update runs on every rendered frame. This runs on the first rendered frame. This runs on every rendered frame subsequent. So if you want something done on every single frame, it's on update. If you want it done on the first frame, it's here. There's other ones as well. These are just pre-built. They're based off of this mono behavior. This just means that all of the scripts have certain templates built into them that they're all derived from, and they're all derived from this one here, which is specific to Unity. We'll cover that later. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to be able to make this guy move. In order to do that, we're going to need a couple of things. I'm going to make a couple of variables, okay? And these variables are the same thing that would be variables inside of math, where, x is equal to something, and then you do 2x is equal to blah, blah, blah. It's a placeholder. That's what these are. They're quite literally just a box that will hold certain values for you. And then you can change what is in the box. You can use that box and combine it with other boxes in order to, add things together. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make a couple of variables that will hold my speed. We'll start with speed. We'll just try and make it move left and right. So because when I push left and right on my arrows, I want it to be able to move left or move right. I want to be able to say how fast I want it to do it. So we're going to hold a variable that's going to hold the speed. So we're going to make it public. Actually, I'll show you this first. So we're going to do a float, and then we'll call it move speed, and then we'll give it an initial value, 2.5f. Okay, so this is one line of code, which also could be called a statement. So, and it's a declaration. So in this case, I have a float. That is the type that this is going to be. So a float means a floating point, meaning it's a decimal number, right? As opposed to an int, which is a whole number. So I wouldn't be able to do 2.5. I'd have to do 2, or I'd have to do 3. Can't do 2.5. This is the unique name that I give it. It can be whatever you like. Usually want to use it so that people know what it is. So in this case, I just did an abbreviation for move speed. But it can be whatever is fine, as long as it's not already a keyword, meaning like I couldn't use start, right? And I can't use float because that's already a reserved word. Okay, so that's what that is. And then I just gave it a value. So this doesn't mean equal. I know I said it equals. This is an assignment. So that means that this value is going into this. All right. So I'm going to use that in order to move my character. Okay. The other thing I'm going to need is this. In order to move our character, we're going to use the same thing that we're using for the gravity. So if you remember, on my character here, we added this rigid body component. I'm going to use this rigid body to move it left and right. Because what you'll notice is if I go underneath it, you'll see right here, see it says velocity? Watch when I hit play, you'll see the velocity will go up. Or actually just on Y, but see how the velocity went up? Now it has no velocity because it's not moving anymore. What we're going to do is we're actually going to use that value of that component in order to move it. So I'm going to go back here, and in order to access it, I need to make a variable that can hold it. So we're going to do rigid body 2D, okay, because that's the type that it is, just like a float. This type will hold a rigid body, and then I'm just going to call it PRB2D because it's my favorite Star Wars robot. But for rigid body 2D, that's what it stands for. Okay. So in this case, we're going to have something that can hold a rigid body, and we're going to call it this. And then whenever we use this, it'll be referencing that. Okay. Now, that looks fine. So yay. All right. Next, what I want to do is I want to actually, this will hold that value, but notice how like we gave this thing a value. Notice that there's nothing in there. I can't make it equals to anything. Okay. What I could do is this. I can get it in there by doing this. Now you'll notice that if I go back to Unity, so I'm just going to hit save and go back. It's going to, every time you do that, it's going to recompile the script that you just wrote. If I look at the player, notice that I was talking about before about each component, right? So there's a transform component on this. There's a sprite render component. There's the rigid body, and then there's the box collider. Okay. So the transform, that handles the move, the positioning, right? Rotation, position, scale. The sprite handles the graphic. The rigid body handles the physics, and then the box collider handles the collisions. Okay. But you'll notice if we scroll down, we also have this material, right, which is kind of attached to this. What I want to do is I actually want to put my script onto this guy. We can do it a couple different ways. You can literally just click on add component, and then I'm just going to back this up. And if you scroll down, you'll see scripts, and then you'll see there's your script right there. And it works just like every other component. You could also do it this way. I could just click and drag this right onto the object here. I could also click and drag it onto the bottom here where it turns blue. Either way works. But now you'll see that it says player controller. So what you'll notice is that each one of these are all just scripts. They're just made scripts that they have inside of Unity, right? So when you bring a script on, it's like you're making your own component, all right? Now, this will be my player controller, and it will allow me to move the player. But it isn't doing anything yet. What I want to do is actually have it move, right? So I want to be able to gain access to this. One of the things I can do is this. Right now, these are both just say what they are, these variables, and then what they're doing. What I want to do is I want to make it so I can access them from anywhere, including the inspector. If I put in public in front of both of these, okay, and then we'll save it, what that's going to do is it's going to mean that any object in any script, anything, can access it from anywhere. Because now it is a public a variable. Okay, so if I want like this platform to be able to change the player movement speed, it can now do that. Before, when I didn't make it public, it's implicitly what we call private. Now, I'm explicitly saying it's private because I wrote private, but basically in the beginning, all you need to know if it's private, only this script can access it. If it's public, other scripts can also access it. Also, when it's public, you can access it, meaning it will show up here. Okay, so now you can see I can change that speed. So when I'm playing the game, I'm like, oh, I want the speed to be different because it's public. I can change it right here. But see, like now it says, oh, there's nothing in that variable. But what you can do is I can quite literally just grab, that's kind of hard. Let's not do it that way. I can literally just drag this onto this, and it will automatically, because this object has a rigid body, it will put it there. So you'll see like the platform doesn't watch. See how it doesn't let me do it? Because there's not a rigid body attached to the platform. Okay, so now you'll see that that rigid body will be applied. Okay, so that's one way of interacting with it. It's not my favorite way, but that's one way you can do it. All right, so now we have those two factors. What I want to do is be able to make it move. So that is going to be on every rendered frame. So I like to remove this little bit here because I don't find that super helpful. So what I want to do is I want to change the velocity of it that I was showing you before, right? So what we're going to do is that is on this variable here. So we're going to say P RB2D, and then that is inside of that. So what I mean by that is this. See how this is inside of this? So just like you have a file folder structure, you know, like when you write like, oh, it's on the C drive, and then you go like, you know, program files, I don't know how it's written, files / you know, apps / something / you know, whatever .exe. Just like this, how you have these forward slashes, it works the same way, but instead we use what's called dot notation. So inside of that RB2D is dot velocity. Okay, so that is inside of that. And then I could do dot velocity dot x, because if you look inside the velocity, right here, velocity, you'll see there's, I was looking down here, but so we have the rigid body, then inside of the rigid body, there's velocity, and then inside the velocity is this x. Okay, so that's how I will get to that specific attribute. I didn't want just the velocity because that would be a vector 2, it would be x and y. I want just the x because I'm just worried about left and right. Okay, so that's how we get to there. So now what I'm going to do is this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do equals, or we're going to give it an assignment. We're going to give that velocity x a value. So this is kind of weird. We have to do what's called a constructor because we have to make a new vector. And actually, instead of just dot velocity, we're going to do just dot velocity, and we're going to make a new vector. So we're actually going to put a vector in here, meaning x, y, and not just a single value. We'll put both values in there. So we're going to have to construct a new vector. So it's going to be new vector 2, because a vector 2 or a vector 3, so x, y, z if it's a vector 3, vector 2 just x, y. We're doing a 2D game, so we just need a vector 2. And then inside of that vector 2, we have to give it two values. It needs an x value and a y value. Okay? So what we're going to do is this. The y value, so I'm just going to leave the x there as a placeholder. I want it to just be whatever it currently is. So in our case, it's going to be the PRB2D dot velocity dot y. And that's it. Because I'm just literally going to put whatever its current velocity is, just put it right back into it. Okay, so that's what that is. So whatever that velocity is. What I want to do is put something different for the x. Now this is going to be a little bit different. This is all new. We're going to run a built-in function or method inside of Unity. And in this case, it's going to be the input. I want to get the input of the player and then multiply it times our speed. So we'll use this quite a bit, but it's input dot get axis. The axis we're going to want to get is going to be horizontal. Okay. And then what we're going to do is let's leave it like that for right now, and then I'll show you what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and save that. If for some reason you have an error, just come back and see if there's an error. Okay, look, I have an error. So it says This is good. Player controller error, something was expected. So see, it's a semicolon. All right. So, and it says line 19, character 84, meaning line 19, which is right here, and then at the end. And if you look, I didn't put this. At the end of each statement, you can see I did it up here. You have to put a semicolon. Okay. So do that. So that's good. So now you should see that go away. Yay. All right. Now, what I want you to know is that, so we do input.getAxis, right? So it's going to look for an axis, and the axis it looks for is horizontal. So just so you understand how this works, it's right here. So if we go to Edit, you go Project Settings, there's a bunch of different options inside of here. Come on, man, move over. There we go. What I want to show you is the input. So go to Input Manager, and you'll see Axis. So the way that axes work is that basically you can set up your inputs into these various axes. So for instance, on a horizontal, if I expand that one, you'll see, and you can make up whatever ones you want. I could call it blah, right? I'm going to undo that because I want to leave it horizontal. That's what I'm going to currently use. It listens for left and right, meaning left and right arrows. It also listens for A and D. So you can use WASD or you can use left and right. I could also set up that it works with a joystick. So like, let's say you have a controller, I could set it up to the axis of the controller. But that's where I'm getting the horizontal. So it's going to listen for these. And what happens is when it uses the axis, because I did get axis, it's going to give me a value from a positive one to a negative one. And just to show you how this works, we're going to do debug. You don't have to write this. I'm just doing this to show you. Oops. Dot log. Again, and I can't write dot for some reason. Dot log. This is a built-in function. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy this in here. So Control C. Okay. So you can do that if you want, but it's not necessary. Okay, so that's where we're getting horizontal. You'll also see here is jump, which we'll be using later, and it listens for space. But if you want to change what the buttons are, you can change them right inside of here. Okay. Good. So now we'll hit play. And if we go to console, I'm going to click on console so you can see how it keeps giving me a value of 0, and it keeps showing over and over. Now watch, though. As I go left, oops. So it's outside the boundary range of the array. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's see. Point. Actually, where is the error? Just out of curiosity. So boom. Sometimes if you click on it at script and it says line 20, and it did not like my log. Oh, that's weird. Let's go ahead and I'm going to comment that out with 2 slashes. Let's see if this works now. So I'm going to unplay it and then play it again. And you can see when we use the arrow keys, left and right, it'll work, and also A and D. Okay. Yay. All right. So the reason why I think that wasn't working is because the value was too high for it to write. So I'd have to abbreviate it, which would be, yeah, we're not going to bother with it. But the idea is that when you use left and right, it's a scale of -1 to +1. So left will be -1 and right would be +1. Okay. So you can see now that does work. I'm just going to remove this for now. But the problem is it's kind of slow because what it's doing is the most value that it's giving, just to show you. So if you look over here on the velocity, you can see the most value that it's giving is going to be positive and -1. See how it says -1 on X there? So watch the X. -1 is the total value I can give it. So that's as much velocity as it's going to get. It's either +1 when I hold the right button, and -1 when I push the left button. So what I want to do is just multiply it times my speed. So we're just going to go here, and we're going to go times move speed, and then save that. And now if we go back, and we hit play, you'll see that now it moves that. And I'm like, oh, that's not fast enough, or it's too fast. I can adjust that. Now what I want to show you is this. If I adjust it right now while the game is playing, I could do, let's say, 10. Okay? Make sure you click back in here, otherwise I won't execute. Oh yeah, now it's working. Yay, right? But watch what happens when I stop playing. It goes back. When you're in play mode, any numbers you change in here do not keep. However, if I type in 10 here now and hit play, it will be 10. Okay? And when I stop playing, it will still be 10. So just be aware that if you change something in here, it could be things even like you adding components and stuff. They will all be removed once you stop playing. And it's just a way, because that way you can test a game and try things out without them being permanent. So it's kind of a feature, not really a bug, but it feels like a bug when you're first learning. Okay. We are going to call that good on this video. And then the next one we'll do is we will add a little bit of jump.